Hey there, this is Toby. Just going to go through 3ds Max, going to talk about the user interface, kind of get you used to where everything is, how to make basic objects, and kind of like just get you used to using the software. What you make with the software is obviously dependent on the brief. I think you're creating medieval buildings, which are relatively simple to do in 3ds Max. I'm not going to show you how to do it in this video, but I probably will release a video later on outlining sort of like the things you need to understand, such as creating the shapes, creating the textures, applying the textures, and rendering, making it look good. But obviously, this is a brand new bit of software. You're not going to know or understand where half the things are. So let's start there. So you should start off, you should open up 3ds Max and you should be presented with this window. When you first start it, a little window will pop up. Basically just pick the default workspace. Don't click on anything else, and it asks you to pick a workspace. Pick the default one. I made the mistake of just rushing in and just opening the default one without showing that window, so that's my bad. In terms of what 3ds Max can do, it's a 3D modeling tool, it's an animation software suite, and a rendering suite. So you can do all three of those things in this program. For the purposes of your project, you'll only be doing 3D modeling and a little bit of texture and material sort of work. So let's focus on those tools first. So on your left, this is what we like to call the outliner, or the kind of like the overview. So in here, when you create objects, they'll be listed here, all your little objects, anything that's linked to it. You can turn things off, so you can hide certain things. You can hide models, you can hide lights, you can hide certain things that are in your scene. In the middle of the screen are your viewports. Now you can change these. These are relatively simple to change. If you don't want, you might as well just leave them as they are. You have a top viewport, so you can see your object from the top. You have your front viewport, so you can see your object from the front. You have your left viewport, so you can see it from the side. Now if you right click where it says left or top or front in any of those viewports, you can change those by going to cameras, right clicking it and picking any one of these. You can also press the relevant keybind, so left is L, back and right for some reason don't have a keybind, so you will have to select it from here. Bottom B, front F, kind of makes sense. And P is perspective. Perspective is your 3D view, to see the object kind of in real time. So once you've actually started making stuff, you use this viewport to kind of rotate the model, to rotate around the model, and look at your object. So in order to move around in these viewports, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an object quickly, and I'm going to explain what keys and what buttons do what. So on your right, you have your tool tab. This is a tab. You have several tabs up here. The tab at the top right here that looks like a little sundial, little sun object, is your create tab. This is where you create, kind of obvious, isn't it? This is where you create objects. So you have different object types. Now these are primitive, these are basic objects that you can edit into what you want to create. So if you're making a building or a house, you start off with a shape that's kind of similar to that to start with, so a box, for example. If you're making something that's kind of like rounded or spherical, you'd use a sphere, no-brainer, cylinder, etc. and so forth. And they're all editable. You can convert them into to be editable, so you can actually just move things and add things to them to make them look like how you want them to. So for now, I'm just going to create a box. So if you click that, you get certain parameters here. You can fill in. You can dictate how big you want the box or how small you want the box. How many segments, for example, how many segments you want on that box if you want to do something to that box. And I'll show you what I mean. So if I click in the viewport, now you can click in any viewport, but I'm just going to use the 3D one for now. And you click and drag, you can kind of see what I'm doing here. So you can click and drag across and let go of the mouse button. Don't click anything else, and if you move the mouse, obviously you can change how high you want the actual cube. You click again to finish creating the object. Now in here you've got all its dimensions, so if you're doing something that's super accurate, you can type in a value. So I'm going to change it to 70, and change that to 40. So if you want to be specific, you don't want any like half units, you can do that and make it very specific. Segments, you can type in a value here, 5, 5, 5. Now you notice in these viewports you can see it happening, you can see it changing. You can't see it in this viewport. To fix that, you see where it says realistic, right click and click edged faces. And this is basically, and it gives you the edge faces. So now, if you left click anywhere in this viewport, anywhere in any viewport, it deselects whatever you're doing. If you left click on an object, it reselects it. Now obviously the options for it have disappeared. To get those back, you go up to the tab here and click modify, and it gives you these parameters again. The modify tab is basically the area you want to look when you want for anything you want to do to that object. So yeah, so you can still change these values. Now I must make you aware that if you change these values after you've started editing the model quite extensively, then you're going to come across some rather large issues. So make sure you get, if you're doing anything with these parameters, make sure you get them right, kind of like more or less at the beginning of your modeling process, because changing them later on will probably give you issues. As I said earlier, to move around the viewport, you've got this kind of like view cube. Now you can click and drag it and rotate the model like that. You can click on which view you want to do. You can click certain angles. You can rotate it and such like that. You click home, which sets it back to default. If you don't have that, or you want to be a little bit pro, if you hold Alt on the keyboard and click your click your mouse wheel in, you can rotate yourself. So you don't need to click. If you if you click your mouse wheel in yourself, you can pan the scene. And if mouse wheel scrolling, zooms. Okay, so that's relatively easy how you can rotate the object. So I'm just going to I'm just going to click that to return to back to how it was. Okay, if you want that full screen, any of these viewports full screen, you see this little button down here, maximize viewport toggle. You can click that to make whatever viewport you have active full screen. Okay. Okay. Other things we can do to the model. So, like I said over here, I have an outline of certain things. So if I start creating other shapes, like sphere, for example, you see how they all start getting highlighted. Okay. So I'm going to click in here, click on modify. Now we've added segments and stuff like that. I'm going to take it back down to 2 because there's no real need to have that many segments unless you're making something really obscure. In fact, you know what? I'm going to change that to 1. Change that to 1. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, so now you're thinking, okay, I've got this split in the middle. I want to move it. I want to edit it. I want to start editing this model now. Okay, that's fine. You can do one of two things. You can right-click on the modify list when you've got it selected, and you can convert to an editable poly if you want to, and that makes the object editable. So you can select individual elements of the model. Now I'm going to assume we've covered what parts of a model or what contributes to 3D model and 3D space already. So the vertex are these points here. They're points where edges meet. An edge is, well, an edge, the edge of a model. The border is, you can't select one on here because there isn't any. A border is basically a series of edges that are connected but don't have a polygon, one of these, covering it, covering the space. An element is basically a 3D object or an isolated 3D element of a model. That's what's called an element. Okay. Now you can convert it to an editable poly, like I said, and be able to do this. If you can hear me clicking the keyboard, because I'm trying to undo the fact I've turned it into an editable poly. Anyway, let me go back. Interesting. Okay, that's not a problem. You know what? I'll just create another box. Create another box, super quick. The same parameters. Now remember when I right-clicked here and I said edge poly? You can do that if you want to. However, you've got this thing here called a modifier list. Now, this is a list. This list is a great number of these things on this list you're never going to really touch. But for the moment, we're going to look for the one that says edit poly. Now, what that does is it means it keeps the original parameter thing available, but it also means you can edit the model as well. It's almost like something you can turn on and off. So if I go in here, go to vertex, and I start doing things to these, I can go back, or I can turn that off, or disable what I've just done, and go back to here and think, oh, actually I want it to be a little bit longer. Now, like I said earlier, the further into your model, or the further into your modelling you go, the more destructive going back to the very beginning and doing this will be. If it's a basic model like a cube, sometimes you can get away with it. Other times, if it's like a character, you would not touch that. You'll probably just end up converting that to an edit poly rather than adding one of these on here. Other keys you'll need to know are W, E, and R. Now you probably think, well, what do I need those for? Well, if I've got the object selected, W brings up this little gizmo. This allows you to move the object back and forth, up and down, and forward and backwards. If you highlight the middle section where it has two axes selected, you basically means you can move them in either one of those axes but not the other, which is kind of good if you want to move it in one direction but you don't know if you want to move it up and down. E allows you to rotate the object. R, oops, pressed T by accident. That's something will happen a lot in 3ds Max. You'll accidentally press a key and you're like, oh, well, it's done something. T changes your top viewport. So R allows you to scale. You can scale on a particular axis if you want to. Scale it universally. Scale it on one axis. You want to bring it up on top. So W, E, and R. So remember those. W move, E rotate, R scale. Kind of backwards. You'd expect R to be rotate, but hey, that's how it rolls. With that in mind, that means you now can go to vertices, which is plural, a plural of vertex. You can select vertices. If you want to select an extra one, and you can't, you hold Control, so a little plus comes up underneath your mouse cursor, and select it, and that means you can start moving stuff around. Okay, so that's relatively simple. Rotate the scene a bit. Oops. That. Grab those. Move those up a bit. So on and so forth. Okay, so you start editing. You start editing your model in a multitude of ways. You can also do different things. Like if you want to click a particular polygon and you want to move it, you can do that. A particular edge, you can move that as well individually. Little tip: if you've got an edge that loops all the way around and you want to select the whole thing, you can go around and hold Control and select the extra edges, or you can just double click it, as long as it's connected and it selects the entire loop. Okay. So I'm trying to think, is there anything else we need to cover? Oh yeah, if you click here, angle snap toggle, if you don't have it clicked, you see when you rotate, it rotates at kind of like random values, like it's rotating but it's not exact. Now imagine you want to rotate it exactly 45 degrees or exactly 90 degrees. Click that, or right click it even, as well. You can set how many degrees you want it to snap. So it's already set to 5 degrees, 5 degree snap. So with that enabled, if you look, you can basically, as you rotate it, it'll only rotate in 5 degree segments, which is really useful if you try to be very, very concise. So if you wanted to do a 45 degree rotation. So really useful there. And that's kind of the basic overview of how to maneuver around 3ds Max, where everything's located. Okay, so you have your Create tab for your objects. I'll go into more detail about other things you can do here at a later point. Modify tab, so when you have an object selected, it gives you all the things you can modify on the model. Other tabs are probably not going to be relevant to you. Things up here, all these tool sets, even this tool set here, you can click and drag it and actually have it separate if you really wanted to. But I tend to prefer, in fact, if I can actually get it back to where it is. Good, next one. There we go. I used to have it on the left for some reason, but that's just me. Down here's something for animation, which you're not really going to touch, and I think that's more or less it for this video. Other things like changing the colour of the object and the material we'll cover another time. So yeah, that's a basic overview of 3ds Max. Enjoy!